A Steam curator has warned players if Sweet Baby Inc. is involved in a game. It is a list on Steam that just acts as a tracker for games involved with Sweet Baby Inc. Tales of Kenzera Zal, not recommended. Mentioned on Sweet Baby Inc.'s newsletter. Used to be featured on the website. Here's an archive. Used to be featured on the SBI's website. Here's an archive. Mentioned in their last update post that decided they decided to involve SBI, Sweet Baby Inc. Here's the proof, right? So literally just saying like, hey, Sweet Baby Inc. worked on this game. Here's a list of all the games that I could find on Steam, right? Now, we found that there are actually additional ones that aren't on there, possibly because they don't have a Steam version. They've worked on more games here. This is how they handled it. Sweet Baby Inc. employees incite harassment campaign against Steam Curator. And just in case you're new here or you don't remember, Sweet Baby Inc. was largely responsible for Justice, what was it called? Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League that we looked at a couple podcasts ago. And they said that we have to divorce ourselves from the idea that white players can't enjoy a game unless it looks like them or whatever. So they believe that the mission of promoting inclusivity is done at the expense of the game's narrative, right? So they shoehorn in gender identity and diversity and inclusion bullshit, and the game suffers overall because of it. Meanwhile, the Sweet Baby employees criticize the curator for being ideologically motivated against woke people. So Chris Kinder said this: the Steam curator harassment group Sweet Baby Inc. Detected is led by this person, Cabrutus Rambo. Here's them trying to be slick so they don't get reported. Even with the discriminatory language filed off, the group itself still fails the code of conduct. Anyway, report the fuck out of this group. And report the creator since he loves his account so much. Get rid of Cabrutus. As stated previously, the curator has been tidying up their page in order to focus on informing consumers. Kramer, on the other hand, accuses the curator of being able to arbitrarily list any game that they want as being involved with Sweet Baby and questions its accuracy and legitimacy. However, the tweet has since received a community note which explains the curator uses Sweet Baby's own website as a resource. Readers added context. The curator uses Sweet Baby Inc.'s website for their source. Also, it should be noted, Lego Butts, Felix Kramer, works for Sweet Baby Inc., right? There's also a little bit more to that thread. Sweet Baby Inc. came to be seen as a key player in the Western video games industry's ongoing deference to ESG and DEI philosophies. Also, they were responsible for this atrocious wall of every kind of flag possible. Yeah. They also changed characters. I think it was Agroba or whatever. Angroba in God of War Ragnarok, right? Is now black. Despite this list being curated both based on publicly available information and with an intent to warn consumers no different than those at the heart of similar Steam curator pages, which bring attention to instances of censorship or de novo DRM, the fact that it centered on their work specifically led to a public outcry over its existence from Sweet Baby Inc. employees. The first was consultant Maya Felix Kramer, who voiced, this is Lego Butts, right? Who voiced her objection to the page amidst a Twitter thread decrying the recent speculation that audiences' rejection of DEI initiatives have played some part in the ongoing wave of video game industry layoffs. No. Truth be told, and in fact, one of like Fortune 500 CEOs even came out and said that these massive layoffs happening at companies is because companies are utilizing AI. They're starting to work it in. They all went to that Tony Robbins event I had to sit through, and Tony Robbins told them to go home and fire everybody and replace them with AI. That's what's happening. All right.
No one really talks about it, but there was also an arms race in terms of hiring people during COVID. So all of these companies overhired, and now are cutting the fat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So there's a whole thread before the line that we already read that has the community note. So I'm just going to show you some of what they had to say. I get to see a lot of tweets somehow blaming diversity as the reason for layoffs genuinely, as if the economy was doing really great and capitalism simply worked before Miles Morales was Spider-Man. Asterisks, they also don't recognize Miles as Spider-Man.
Oh my god.
The biggest crime.
So that's they're referencing the fact that like every other week the fucking hashtag or saying whatever Spider-Man is, or Peter Parker is Spider-Man, Miles Morales is Miles Morales.
Mm-hmm.
Like what is it? Geeks and not geeks. Well, yeah, they're part of Geeks and Gamers, but
Yeah.
Friday Night Tights and Yellow Flash, they both post those tweets all the time whenever they're looking for Twitter engagement, because they know it freaks everyone out.
I couldn't help but notice the game was called Spider-Man Miles Morales.
Yeah, and that's their whole point. And it's like they don't even care to understand what the point is being
it's
made.
Almost like they fucking know. Right? It's almost like they goddamn know the reason why you have to differentiate them.
Well,
you don't call Spider-Man 2099 Spider-Man. You call him Spider-Man 2099, right? Like it's a fucking different character. God damn
it. But that's like the tweets. Hold on, let me turn my. The tweets are referencing the fact that Spider-Man 29 is a separate character, and whenever you refer to Spider-Man 2099, you always say Spider-Man 29, 2099, or Spider-Gwen, that kind of thing. And with Miles Morales, they never gave him another name, so he's always just been Spider-Man, like Miles Morales, because they didn't want to give him another name because that would take away the fact that he's actually Spider-Man from the Ultimate Universe. So he's but obviously everyone refers to the original Spider-Man as Spider-Man, and he will always be second fiddle. So he will now be referred to as Miles Morales.
I want to live in a world where they called him Spider N-word, and they're mad that we won't refer to him as anything but Miles Morales, right? I like how you reverted to blackface. Anyway, yeah,
I like the Ring of Trojan Spider.
The Trojan. Oh, Spider Trojan, I like it. Okay, yeah. So it's fucking absurd, and literally again, cultural colonization, right? That they need to, right? That they need to. They're upset that we don't accept that the established character remains like that, like the established character of Spider-Man remains relevant in spite of being replaced, right? Like that people look at the hero that's been around since what, the fucking 50s, and remember him as Peter Parker instead of
60s,
yeah, so whatever, but they remember him as Peter Parker because he's had a goddamn 60 years establishment, right? Versus just like this is Spider-Man. It's like, no, it's not. It's a different character, like you don't erase George Washington just because you've had 46 some odd other presidents. You know what I mean? That's fucking absurd.
Ethan Van Sciver had a good point, and I don't know if I 100% believe it, but it's a good theory in that there's a loophole in copyright law that says that an original creator, even though they sell the rights to a company of their creation, can buy back their ownership or like claw it back, not buy it back, but claw it back from even though they sold it from the company after, like, I don't know, it's like 50 years or something. It's a long time, but there is this safety hatch thing. Ethan Van Sciver's theory was that because the clawback situation was going to kick in with Spider-Man, they wanted to pivot and use a newly created Spider person that had all the same powers as Spider-Man and was based in the Spider-Man world, but did not infringe on the original 1960s copyright of Spider-Man.
So that they could keep that but lose
Yeah.
the original.
So if they did lose the original, they would just make Miles Morales books, and he would still be Spider-Man, but he wouldn't be the 1960s Steve Ditko Spider-Man. So that's why they decided to keep him distinct and not call him something else. They wanted to make him Miles Morales. And I think that kind of makes sense. I don't know if
So
actually what happened.
Here's the thing that is amazing to me about this, like the amount of like controlling aspect of these individuals. They also don't recognize Miles as Spider-Man. Okay, but far and away, the fan base, I mean, I wouldn't consider myself a fan of comics in general, but largely the fan base accepts Miles.
Yeah,
right?
that's the whole thing. The people that are making this argument on Twitter about like, oh, Miles Morales is Miles Morales, are not saying he's not factually Spider-Man. Like,
or that they don't like. My point about bringing this up is that while people outright reject Riri Williams as a black teenage girl Iron Man, people largely accept Miles Morales because it feels more earned the way that he attained.
It
the
was
position.
also, it was done earlier before the whole like every other character is getting replaced. So now we notice. It's like Marvel building up to the Avengers versus DC doing Justice League, right?
Yeah, and it's also, I would say, early enough that it's kind of like the whole situation with the black actress in Sonic the Hedgehog, right? So it happened early enough that it didn't break the immersion because it may have started the trend, but it was early on enough that people, like the motives behind doing it seemed to be more about copyright. I mean, I'm not saying that we perceived that when it was occurring, but because the motives were less about shoving diversity and inclusion down your throat and more about what they were trying to do with the copyright, the motivation behind it didn't cloud, like the DEI motivation didn't cloud actually writing a story as the way it did with all the other instances of race swapping and bullshit.
Writing the story is the key thing.
Because also nobody really cared when Samuel L. Jackson's character, what's his name again?
Nick Fury.
Nobody really cared when he got race swapped either.
So that's what I was going to say. So Aspen Gold had brought up, has been mentioning it frequently, and that is, people don't give a shit actually about the diversity crap. They care that they're writing shit stories.
Yes.
In the name of diversity.
Yes.
All they have to do is write good stories and people will like the characters. And so it's not like Miles Morales was the first race swapped character. We had Nick Fury, we had Hal Jordan got replaced by Jon Stewart.
Far and away the best Green Lantern too.
Captain America was replaced by Falcon, right? At one point. In the comics, like way before And now, when they do it, it's like, oh yeah. But when they did it before, it was like whatever. It's because back then it was like, okay, it's written well enough, or people didn't give a shit enough. Like they didn't care enough about it to pull up a stink. But now it's like it's a big red flag. So now people are being more scrutinized to the actual story, and it's like, okay, well now you have to be a good story to get away with doing this. Otherwise, you're just looking like one of the, cash grab DCEU movies coming out, right, by Schneider, and they were all shit because they were trying to rush what Avengers did in 10 years in 1 year, and that's just not going to work.
I saw something recently about like an Aztec Batman or something like a DC, like a DC animated movie. It looks like it's coming out.
The DC animated movies have actually been pretty good. Although, well, I mean, maybe not in the last 5 or 6 years, but I haven't watched the recent ones, but they used to be good.
Yeah. So this is illustrating the point you made about like the characters, like nobody cared about the diversity and stuff. It's not about the diversity. It's about telling a shit game and putting up the shield like, well, you only don't like our lack of effort because the character's black and you're racist, right? So this was his take on Palworld we talked about previously. The success of Palworld proves that the only thing customers actually care about is a good game. AI, slavery, bestiality, copyright infringement, it's a video game. These are pretend problems that people don't actually care about. Make a good game, people will buy the game. It's simple. Translate that now to what we were just talking about regarding, like, nobody cares that Miles is black. Like, that has nothing to do with him not being referred to as Spider-Man. You know, the reason he's not referred to as Spider-Man is because fucking Peter Parker is Spider-Man and he has 60 years on him. You know, if Miles, yeah, exactly. If Miles Morales came out in 1967 or something and was the mainstay Spider-Man for 50 some odd years, yeah, people would view him as Spider-Man because he's outlived and holds all the cultural authority of the character for 50 fucking years. But that's not what we're dealing with here, you know? Now, anyway, I want to get back to this because we've only looked at one of the tweets so far. So they also don't recognize Miles as Spider-Man. The weirdest part is when I see these takes from developers or people who have dev bios, at least, I don't know, it seems wild that a dev would see thousands of layoffs and blame not the industry giants, but instead a 15-person narrative company founded by a black woman. Right? Like,
well, let's be real though. Like, if these companies were making billions of dollars on each one of these, AAA games, they would be keeping those employees. Like,
exactly. Seriously, the lack of self-awareness. The worst part is when I see these takes from developers or people with dev bios, at least it seems like it would be weird. You'd think they look at these thousands of lists and blame the industry giants. But instead, it's the 15-person narrative company founded by a black woman. Well, when you're the common denominator in all of these shit games, fuck yeah, people notice. When your goddamn calling card is trans rights on every fucking game, yes, people fucking notice. It's unbelievable. And it's like, literally, it's like, oh, it's not the industry giants that are to blame. It's like, no, because up until now, their track record has been that they've made games you could sit down and enjoy. And now you're getting force-fed trans flags all over New York City and Spider-Man.
And you can't mod them out.
And you get banned for creating a mod that reverts them to an American flag, which is the version of the game that they had to release in Saudi Arabia.
I forgot about that.
These people think a company of narrative designers that freelances on projects has somehow single-handedly caused the employment collapse in games. And no, I just think you've caused the collapse in games being good, right? Like, there are so many games that would be a perfect 10 if not for the fact that you came in like a bull in a china shop and put trans flags all over the place and force-fed everybody your bullshit.
Also, this is kind of a side note, I guess, but I think like a lot of these people come in and they'll put a character in like, oh yeah, the black character, and then they'll come out and make a big stink about it, like the first black character, and it's like, but it's not the first black character. Like, here's a number of other characters, and because it was Friday,
I don't remember who was the originator of this quote. If anybody knows, I'd love to give them credit when I say it, but somebody coined it very well, where they said, leftists are always trying to rewrite history so they can make it. Meaning they want to erase the cultural impact of diversity in entertainment in the past so they can claim that their first black superhero movie, Hancock, was not that long ago. Blade, Meteor Man, like fucking we've had black superheroes going back, Spawn, like it's not your position to be able to come in here and say you did it first when you fucking didn't, and everybody goddamn knows it. Like, we're not going to pretend that reality is different just so that you can feel good about yourself.
On Friday, I was listening to Rebecca Black's Friday because it was
a common
Friday.
occurrence?
It happens every once in a while.
Yeah.
But
okay.
if you recall,
listen,
that
man,
video.
Look, if you were at a high school and they like play it every Friday and you've heard it a billion goddamn times, it's like, yeah, naturally, it's Friday, so I heard Rebecca Black's Friday, so that's what got me thinking. If that was you work from home, buddy. Like, that was a choice. You typed that shit in.
Someone says it's Friday, and then it gets in my head, and I'm like, oh, it's Friday. It's catchy, okay? It's sung terribly, but it is catchy. I got it. Although, I mean, some of the lyrics is also hot garbage.
Yeah. You just sing along to the rap bit, right? Like...
No. But anyway, my point in bringing it up is that Rebecca Black was hated. Everyone hated her, and the video got like the most thumbs down in all of YouTube, right? And why? Was it because she put out a shit video and a shit song? No, that is not why. The reason why is because the music producer that she hired went around and tried to convince the news, and for some reason did convince them, that Rebecca Black was the next Justin Bieber. Mm-hmm. She is not anywhere close to the next Justin Bieber. There was no business having those two names in the same sentence. That is why people hated the song, because they were given expectations.
Okay,
and then
I would just like to point out,
drowned.
For future reference, that story did not. Your name changed. That story did not require you to say, yeah, I was just listening to Rebecca Black the other day because naturally it was Friday, right? That point could have been made without that admission.
Well, so, I give the full story.
It is a good point, though. It is a good point because
Reese, where'd you go?
I don't know. He yeeted himself somehow. It is a really good point, though, because you bring up the fact, like, there are bad movies and there are bad movies. There are movies you watch because they're bad, and there's movies you get up and walk out of because they are bad, So you can sit through The Room 1,000 times and enjoy it and quote it and everything, and the experience of watching a train wreck movie like that is positive. But sitting through a piece of shit that is lecturing you left and right and hangs on shots way too long, doesn't know how to like properly tell a narrative story, becomes overly confusing, seems like they ran out of a budget midway through, and pretended like they didn't, kind of thing, versus like Velocipaster, where it cuts to a shot that literally has text on screen that says like VFX car on fire, as though it was like a placeholder that they ran out of money to fill in and then just said, fuck it, let's leave it in, kind of thing. Like, there are things like that where you can experience a movie that's shit and a movie that's so bad it's good. In this regard, I would say that is one of the reasons. Like, it's sort of a different look at the point you're making regarding the Rebecca Black song. It's like that song, I think, I would have thought, became viral to the degree it did because A, everybody was making fun of it, and B, because every goddamn high school in the country for some reason decided to play it. It's like in the Office when Andy first becomes manager, he starts playing the song Closing Time at the end of the workday, and he does it every fucking day, right? And it's like, it just seems like the thing to do because the song's about closing and they don't have to go home, but they can't stay here and all. So it's like, that's the same thing they did with Fridays. Like, it's Friday, let's play the song about Friday, right? Autistically, they thought to themselves. And so that dramatically increases the number of plays, because roughly, what would you say, like 36 weeks a year, every half the schools in America at least are playing this fucking song on repeat. You know what I mean? Like, anyway, the point is that that's not what's occurring with Sweet Baby Inc., right? Like, in their mind, they are the next Justin Bieber. But to everybody else, it's like, it's a movie that is not so bad it's good. It's so bad that every second of it is literal torture to sit through, you know? So these people think a company of narrative designers and that freelances on projects has somehow single-handedly caused the employment collapse in games, instead of, the insane notion of infinite growth or capitalist greed. It's easier to blame diversity than that somehow. It's just the level of IQ that it requires to blame everything on capitalism and everything I don't like is racist kind of thing, versus acknowledging in the free market that in order for your bullshit, interpretive dance degree on, or what do they call it, lesbian dance theory, in order for that to make you money, you need customers. You need customers to survive, no matter what you do in life. If you provide a service that's useful, you make money and you survive. If you don't, you go out of business, right? Like, that's natural. Literally any person who has a job understands this. And yet some people who have conned their way up through these DEI initiatives, where they are like government, what do you call it? Like, subsidized effectively to keep their industry, to keep themselves in the industry. And they basically just weasel their way in. Like, yeah, we're your, what do you call it? Like, the fucking panel of trans people that Jello Apocalypse talked about for the localization of Lovely Complex. We ran it by a panel of transies, and they said our changes to the dub were okay, right? It's like when they did that episode of Family Guy, and Seth MacFarlane talked about showing it to a bunch of rabbis to get approval, right? Oh yeah, Peter learns his lesson in the end. It's okay, right? For that one where he sings the "I Need a Jew" song.
I don't remember that one.
You don't know that? I don't know. It's from like season 3. Anyway, they go on to say, I still think it's way more likely that they know that's not the case and are just fine with looking stupid, so long as it justifies them being loudly anti-woke, whatever that means. We all know what it means. Again, just the level of IQ of a person to believe that, like, literally hook, line, and sinker believe that it's because it's because you're racist. Oh, well, you have a problem with what I do? Well, it's because you're racist. Imagine living in that life, right? Where, like, this is like, when you see like the preppy, prissy, kids who are brought up by the mom who, like, how dare you talk to my child that way? You've done nothing. You can do no wrong, little princess. Like, they kind of like raise them to believe that their shit doesn't stink. That's effectively what we have with these DEI people who believe you could only decry me because you're racist, right?
Yeah.
That you're like, that's effectively how they've been raised, is that, like, their shit doesn't stink. So the other part of this is that it doesn't matter if you tell them the truth. They think DEI just steps in and changes whole games. That creators are forced. Look, you don't have to change the whole game. If you stick a drop of diarrhea in a soup, I don't want to eat it. All right, okay. You don't have to fucking change the whole game. It could be the greatest fucking game ever. Games that are literally a perfect fucking 10. You put that drop of diarrhea in there, and it is shit nobody wants to touch. It's that fucking simple. The creators are forced by some unseen hand, the government, BlackRock, I guess, as well as just people of color in general, to make games more inclusive. Look, I don't know that I would say that they're forced. They're incentivized by ESG grants. Yes. Yeah. So yes, government. Government has come in and subsidized your role. Your role exists. The reason you have had any business in the industry at all is not because you're talented. It is because you are the quickest way to check a box to get an ESG grant so that even when your game sales tank, you still make a profit because the government, mainly actually the people, are footing the bill for your bullshit product nobody actually wants. Fighting misinformation would be great, but social media plus YouTube is not equipped to hold people accountable to doing real research in good faith. Look, nobody has to do any research to realize that when they see like George Floyd Avenue in fucking Spider-Man, that it breaks their immersion. It's not that fucking hard. I don't need goddamn research to know that when I step into your dog shit, that it smells like dog shit. Just getting hits and proving their point in the absence of confirmation. It's wild out there. Nothing has changed. Nothing. Sorry. No one thing has changed. No. One thing has changed. Improper grammar there. No comma. The number of people who understand that spreading misinformation just lets them be racist in public with no consequence has increased dramatically. That has changed. Probably requires some fighting from those with authority. Probably. Anyway, then they go on to, for example, Steam doesn't have guidelines for its curators. Then they get community noted. Rather than admit to her misunderstanding of the situation, Kramer instead responded to the community note by protesting. It's pretty funny to see a note on my Steam curator post. I guess they need to defend themselves because they're completely wrong about everything Sweet Baby or any narrative team does and have no interest in finding out. All right. In the screenshot shared by Kindred, this is the other person we were talking about before, Cabrutus Rambo can be seen allegedly confirming that he started the list, quote, to make people aware of those who try to corrupt our beloved hobby, and declaring his intent to use more neutral language in order to avoid any bans or reports. However, since beating his chest so publicly, Kindred, right, this person who we read first, has both deleted all of his above tweets on the topic and set his account to private. The official Sweet Baby Inc. Twitter account has also locked their account. And they will still think they are the victim. Still. Like, criticism can't exist because I am, perfect princess, right? And so anybody who says anything mean to me it's because they're racist, right? Continue to live that way. The attention has done little to perturb the curator himself, Cabrutus Rambo, as recent days have seen him retweeting memes, embracing the name Krampus Rambo, thanks to YouTuber Asmongold, and boasting about having received a block from Kindred. Man, I was almost forgetting how much fun the internet can be. Thanks, everybody, for all the messages and support. Let's put the keys of the gaming industry back in the players' hands. So, Learning the Law, manga lawyer, says, Sweet Baby Inc. employee advocates for diversity and inclusion, tries to censor a Brazilian user from Latin America. I don't think this will improve their reputation. So the Krampus, Cabrutus here, is Brazilian. He's from Brazil, right? And he goes on to say, oh, and by the way, I'm not a Latinx. We hate this term. Hear that, Sweet Baby Inc.? Grum says, the cancel pigs are at it again. Sweet Baby Inc. narrative writer is trying to get Steam to ban the group that simply reports on if Sweet Baby writes DEI content for a game. They want his Steam account banned, his games taken away, and the group gone so they can work in secret. Chris, right? Chris, your cancellation efforts are simply bullying. If you are so proud of the work you do, why are you trying so hard to hide it? To which I saw this and I thought this was fucking wonderful. At Sweet Baby Inc., we revise your favorite games to make sure they're woke, diverse, inclusive, and spread tolerance through the world. Oh, then I'll make a list so people know which titles you worked on. Click. like, what were you gonna say?
It's just so stupid that like if the same exact curated list came out and it was just titled, "Look at all the great diversity games," they wouldn't have 1 ounce of issue with it. And
the literal only problem they have with it is that it says not recommend.
Yeah,
and I don't know. I don't use Steam. I've never had a Steam account. I don't fucking know. But I imagine you have to choose some form of rating. Is there a neutral? Like if you're curating a list, it's either because you're suggesting a game or not suggesting it, right?
I've never even used
that's just
the
how it
feature
seems
before.
To
me. But
yeah, like is this not exactly the problem that libs of TikTok fights on a daily basis? Literally taking their own content and republishing it.
It was on their website.
Audience sees it.
Yeah,
that's literally all it is. Literally all it is, and they act like it's the end of the fucking world. So, Juan says, and this is relevant information because I will not buy a single game where Sweet Baby has worked on it. As a customer, I deserve to be informed about these things. 1K. There you go, buddy. All right. You have any more thoughts on that before we continue?
No, I said most of it, what I wanted to say. The main thing is like it's the idiocy that a person, they're trying to get someone canceled and their Steam account banned and all of their games, they deleted basically, because they made a list that was already on their website, and they put their names in the credits. They want you to know they worked on the games. They're just butthurt that they're not the people that are being liked right now. Stupid.